Bartlett,
Here.
Boersma,
Here.
Caravello,
Here.
Doom,
Here.
Hiley,
Here.
Hirsch,
Here.
Jensen,
Here.
Maeski,
Here.
Reeves,
Here.
Riley, Schumacher,
Here.
and Lagaki and Riley are absent and excused.
Thank you, Holly. Are there any communications tonight from council members? Alderperson Boersma.
I have something very quick. I'm back home from Dayton, it's so nice to be home, and I appreciate all the support from the council and other people for letting me go. So, it was kind of intense time, but it was worth going. We were well represented by Wisconsinites. Nice to be home.
Thank you. Any other communications? Hearing none, we do have a presentation tonight. Jerry DeShane is here from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. And you can come on right up to the podium here and let us know what's going on with the league.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. Jerry DeShane, I'm the executive director of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, which you and 188 of the other 190 cities in Wisconsin are all members, along with all of the villages. My goal tonight in just a few minutes, first and foremost, is to answer any questions you may have. I'm going to talk primarily about some of the services that the League provides for you and for the staff of the city, but we also obviously do a lot of work with advocacy, with the legislature. Alder Boersma just got back from Dayton, Ohio. One of the things that we're working on now in collaboration with the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police is working on a jointly signed letter to urge the legislature to do something, for lack of a better word, about incidences of mass violence. And a large number, I believe Mayor Swadley has agreed to put his name on that letter. There's over 110 signatories from around the state. And that's a big part of how we operate with advocacy. We are your voice to the legislature, to the governor, to the agencies, and we derive our strength essentially from all of you getting engaged. The League itself, for those of you that are not familiar with it, it's an organization that was created by the cities in Wisconsin back in the late 1800s. As I said, virtually all of the cities and villages are members. We have two very simple purposes. I kind of boil them down in one statement. We're here to help you do your job. And whatever that means is what we're here to do. Over the decades, what that has evolved to is that we are a resource library, and we've got some really sharp librarians in our office. They're actually attorneys. I shouldn't call them librarians. We just redid our website a few years ago, and our web developer was shocked when we told him we have 1,900 pages of information on the League's website. We were originally affiliated with the University of Wisconsin. They kept the library, and then we did the advocacy work. Over the years, that library part of the project has come back to us. The other resource, and again, that website is there for you, any of your constituents, any member of the public, on virtually any topic having to do with municipal government. There is information there. The two people that I referred to as librarians, I now wish I'd never said that word. We have two attorneys on staff who take on average about 3,000 phone calls per year. They are not there to give legal advice. There's a very important difference there, but Claire Silverman and Maria Davis have seen and experienced virtually every sort of municipal question that's out there, everything from alcohol licensing to urban chicken ordinances. I realize Stoughton now has a honeybee ordinance, which is a good thing, as long as they don't bite. A little bit nervous about honeybees, but no, seriously, we're there. We've answered many of these questions over the years, and they're there as a resource for the mayor, for individual members of the council, for the staff of the city. Again, our job is to help you do your job in whatever that takes, whatever form that takes. The mayor passed out a couple of registration forms for you. If you don't mind my asking, how many of you have participated in either our Local Government 101, or the League's annual conference. Okay? Quite a few. Yes, Attorney Dragney is one of our speakers quite often, and glad to have him. Well, there's one more opportunity for Local Government 101. This is basic training for local elected officials, particularly aimed at alders, alderpersons, and at village board members. And I really would encourage you to participate in that if you have not. It used to be called New Government Officials Training until we realized that it was a great refresher course for those of you that have been around a while. We talk a little bit about parliamentary procedure, we talk about powers and duties, we talk about the various functions of a city, and it's meant to be from a neutral party's perspective. We don't have a position on any particular municipal issue. It's meant for us to give you basic information, again, on how you do your job. The League's big event of the year is coming up in the third week in October. That is the annual conference. This year it's taking place in Green Bay. I believe Mayor Swadley, you're planning to be there. Again, I would urge all of you, if you're available, to attend. We have 36 different workshops, everything from a basic training on tax increment financing and kind of a deep dive into the so-called but-for test and the legal meaning of that test. There is a new water quality issue out there that if you have not run into yet, I dare say you will. There's a family of chemicals referred to as PFAS. A number of communities are running into that. It's having an effect on their ability to redevelop property. Right now, the state, the science is rushing to catch up with where we've been. These chemicals have been around since the 1950s. We're only now beginning to understand the impact that they have on human health. The DNR is working on regulations, which will have an impact on your water system, which will have an impact on your sewer system, which will have an impact on redevelopments. These PFAS chemicals, you find them in things like Scotchgard, Teflon, and a whole host of industrial chemicals. But again, we'll be providing information on that at our annual conference, and if you watch our newsletters and magazines, you'll be reading about it as time goes on. You all either receive or are eligible to receive the monthly magazine, The Municipality. We try to make that our central focus for information provision. You've seen a lot of articles on environmental issues such as that, on tax issues. We will continue to do that. We have an electronic variation of that called the e-Muni. Again, all these things are available to you at no additional cost. Stoughton has been a member of the League for as long as any of us can remember, and we please encourage you to take advantage of those. So I've sort of gone on and on. I need to take a breath here. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, sir.
Very, very easy. The date again on that conference or convention?
The annual conference is the 23rd through the 25th of
Right
October.
here at the top of the handout. Thank you.
I had to look too. You'd think I'd remember. Yeah, it's a Wednesday through Friday. We're done at noon on Friday.
Thank you.
And you know, one of the things that I like to tell people, we put on excellent training. We have some incredible resources. But the other thing that we do is we bring you together with your peers. And I've been doing association management work for 30 years, and I will tell you, no matter how proud I am of the topics we put together, time and time again, the places you're going to get your best ideas are from one another. The League is, if nothing else, an expert at networking. We bring you together to talk with city officials from other places and to pick up new ideas, and I guarantee if you take the time to attend, you will pick up those ideas. So, any feedback for the League, anything we're doing right or wrong? Always looking for that as well.
In this one, in the local government 101 registration form, I'm assuming these are all 2019 dates, so we only have the one Wapaka date. That is the only one that's available, correct?
That is the only one that is still available, correct.
Okay, do you have an inkling as far as the 2020 dates would be, or?
They will be roughly in the same period of time.
Okay.
You get elected in spring, right? We try to time our training for May, June. So you'll see that round of training again, not necessarily those exact dates, but around those dates in May and June of next year.
And the cities will vary on there, I'm assuming?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Again, we try to spread it around there. There will be one always in the Madison area, but in past years, if it doesn't work in Madison, you can go to Pewaukee.
Sure.
I've actually had people from Madison come to Ashland. That's fine, if that works for you. Lake Superior is beautiful this time of year.
That's the one I was thinking about.
I like the way you think. So just one more time, I mean, the league is here to help you do your job. It's very simple. In concept, we cover a lot of ground, but at the end of the day, if you have a question, you don't even know where to go to ask the question, or perhaps don't even know how to formulate the question, I would encourage you to call one of my people. Claire and Maria have a tremendous amount of experience and can guide you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm just curious, are there any particular issues that the league is focusing on with regard to lobbying this present legislature that we deal with?
Yes. Obviously, we worked hard on the last state budget. Governor Evers introduced a budget that would have given us a little bit more breathing room on levy limits, a number of other things. That did not survive the legislative process, but what did survive was a 10% increase in transportation aids, a small increase in transit aids. We were glad to see that. We are very involved with DNR on this PFAS issue. That is taking up a tremendous amount of time because I would put it on a scale of phosphorus in terms of its potential impact on cities. So we're spending a lot of time with that. This current legislative session, if you measure it in terms of the number of bills that are being signed into law, there aren't many. This legislature and this governor are, let's say, feeling one another out. So we don't, frankly, expect a lot of dramatic legislation to get done this fall. We are working on some property tax assessment cleanup language, but very technical in nature. It would basically anyone except your assessor, it would put them to sleep where I try to explain it. But it basically makes it easier for you to make your case in an assessment challenge. You've all heard about dark store and the challenges that cities have had with that argument. This isn't a solution to that, but it does get you part of the way there. So those are the scale of bills that we're working on for this fall. I think until the governor and the legislature figure out how to work together as members of different parties, you're going to continue to see not much in the way of dramatic legislation pass.
You have one more, and then Alderperson Boersma after that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor. What, if any, luck have you had with this Republican legislature regarding increasing any local control for communities, for your members? Obviously, a lot of that has been taken away over the course of their legislative reign. Have you been able to focus on that at all, or been able to recapture any local control?
Alderperson Riley, we focused on it. I'm not going to kid you, no, we have not been terribly successful. We continue to chip away at that. In fact, our call for action on these incidents of mass violence essentially says, look, legislature, you hold all the cards when it comes to gun regulation. But it's our police officers, it's our ambulance drivers, and we at least work together. No, that's an issue that we still need to chip away at.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just real briefly, I wanted to put in a plug for 101. It used to be called whatever you said.
New officials training.
Right, and I took it a number of years ago, and there was one of the presentations was on keeping up your streets, how it's much better to keep up your streets than to let them go. And I've been on Public Works since then, since I took that. But it really was informative as to the fact that if you don't keep up your streets, you don't either resurface them or do something with them or allow holes in them that they disintegrate. And I think that I took that to heart, and I think I really learned a lot from that particular conference. I remember remember the guy, and I remember who presented, and I remember basically what he said from a number of years ago. So if anybody hasn't gone to 101, it really is worthwhile.
Thank you, Alderperson Boersma. That statistic, by the way, is if you don't maintain your streets, I think it costs you 4 times as much. It costs the city 4 times as much if you have to rebuild it, completely rebuild a street, as maintain it.
Director Shield, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Just one question to see if you've seen any movement on the recent change to prohibit municipalities from condemning land for bicycle facilities. Is there any conversation occurring about trying to repeal that restriction?
We are trying. We have the legislation. It's drafted. Governor included it in his budget. The legislature took it out. And, this gets back to Alderperson Riley's comments. No, I don't see that happening. Not right now.
We have a personal example of how that's impacting us, so maybe the mayor already explained it to you, so.
Yeah, I forwarded
Okay.
the explanation of the example, and Kurt Wazinski is our lobbyist that works with Jerry, and he's keeping a tally of all these to give real-life examples. And that's what we try to do when we go to the Capitol, and I know Chief Leck does the same thing when he goes there, is really to give our legislators, and even those that aren't in our district, give them real-life examples of how the decisions they make at the state level really affect us locally.
Well, and that raises a good point, and I'm feeling a little bit like, I'm letting you down up here. But it took 5 years, 6 years to pass meaningful transportation budget increases. These are conservative legislators, and they just have to be shown example after example. And we can get there. We do have to be persistent. I think to Mayor Swadley's point, we need to collect those examples and just keep hammering on them. Alderperson Boersma, your comment about maintaining your streets, it can be done, but it's not going to be an overnight matter.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Alderperson Hirsch.
I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do, and I enjoy your magazine, and I've learned a lot from it, so thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Alderperson, and let me conclude by thanking all of you for all you do, for being here at 7:30 on a really nice sunny summer evening.
Yeah, thanks for rubbing it in.
Hey, I am a Stoughton resident. I read last week's Hub. I am pumped about some of the projects that you're looking at, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment period. Nobody has signed up to speak tonight, but I would give one last call to anyone out there that would like to address the council. And seeing none, we'll go to the consent agenda, which consists of a couple items. I'm looking for a motion for the consent. Motion by Alderperson Jensen, second by Alderperson Hiley. Would anybody like anything removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Old business, we have a second reading on tonight. I believe this came out of the Plan Commission, ordinance 23 of 2019, and I'd look for Alderperson Caravello to introduce this.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance 023 of 2019, which is an ordinance to adopt the amended comprehensive plan of the city of Stoughton. Plan Commission recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Riley. Anything that you'd like to explain, or would you like somebody else to help you, or what are you thinking?
Basically, this is to adopt the KPW master plan as a supplement to the city's comprehensive plan, so they can move forward with the development of the northern section of the KPW area that they're looking at developing, and also includes amendments to the plans, the original ideas that they brought to us that changes some of the streets designs out there.
Okay. And the developers are here, or Director Shield can give you more background information if you need it. Any questions or comments? Alderperson Boersma?
Yeah, I have a problem with our comprehensive plan, and that is, I have been harping on this, and I know that, but having a comprehensive plan which requires sidewalks on both sides, I think, is unpractical in some of our streets, and I really don't know quite what to do about it, because I've talked about it so much, and I think other people have too. But sidewalks on both sides of the street and sidewalks on streets that really go to nowhere, I think that does not make sense to me. And so I'm not sure if I should vote for this or not. I'm kind of up in the air about it. But I think we need to address that issue. I think it's difficult for the city because it costs a lot of money to put sidewalks in, and if they're not useful, and if the citizens don't want them, I think we should be real careful about that issue, and I think we should ultimately change the policy of having sidewalks on both sides.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I guess I could just respond, that's regulated through the ordinance and not necessarily through the comprehensive plan. So that would be an ordinance change that would be required in order to change that. So I don't know how relevant it is to this particular comp plan amendment, but certainly, that's something we can always look at, the language that's in the comp plan, and see if there's, a policy change that would be in order. I think many have tried and many have failed to try to improve that, and that would be something we'd have to, take on at Public Works again.
And we talk about it ad nauseum on Public Works.
So I understand. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all in favor of the ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, one opposed, that carries. New business, resolution R-130 of 2019. This last went through the Finance Committee, so I would call on Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, I move to approve Resolution 130, 2019. The resolution is to earmark unassigned fund balance not to exceed $20,000 to fund the Senior Center Program Volunteer Coordinator position at 32 hours per week with benefits through 2020. So moved.
Second.
Who was the first one? Lisa? Did you hear Riley? Did you second it?
He did. I
Okay,
heard him
all
say
right.
I
that.
stepped on it
Yep.
a little bit, so.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard you over there. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. We have, did you want to go through anything on this one?
Sure.
Otherwise,
I mean, it's spelled out well in the resolution, but the Bryan Foundation had previously funded a large portion of this at $40,000, and they scaled back their contribution. So reevaluating that position, we found out that there was just a tremendous value that this position brings to the senior center, as well as the individual that is already in that position. So,
okay, that's good. And we do have Director Gillingham and McGlynn here if you have any questions for them specifically. Alderperson Hirsch?
I think we need to quick clarify.
Oh, okay. And then we'll have Alderperson Hirsch when you're completed.
So real quick, we just wanted to give an update. That employee has terminated employment or given notice because we weren't able to finalize soon enough. So she has accepted a position elsewhere and will be leaving September 6th. So it will not be for an existing incumbent. It would be for the next person coming into that position.
But, so we can list it as soon as possible.
Alderperson Hirsch? Did you have a question?
Yes. I mean, I'm very sad that that money was pulled. I'm just trying to figure out, going forward, how this is going to be paid for. Is it part of your budget that's coming up? We're in the midst of kind of budget decisions, and I know there's a lot of staff that are looking for other employees to fund, and I guess to have it outside this budget discussion is kind of, as much as I want to support it, I guess I'm a little uneasy because I know of at least 3 other leadership people that want money, and now we're
Right.
taking this out, and then we don't have, I don't know where, future-wise, where this is coming
Correct.
from, and I would fund it definitely through 2019, but until it's part of the bigger budget, until we have a line item for it, I guess I really have a problem.
When I brought this to AJ and to Jamin, we discussed, and Tim, obviously, when we discussed this is an existing position, so this is not something that new money is, we're not looking for a new position in 2020. Obviously, if that was the case, it would wait. This being an existing position, and if I have to wait to post this position after the budget is finalized, we're not going to be able to schedule programming through the end of the year. So.
And also to recruit for a position that
Yeah,
right now would be budgeted through the end of the year at full-time, then say, hey, potentially in 2020, you want to have a position, we're going to be right back to where we are today,
Yeah.
where the employee said, I can't wait any longer, and went and got a different position elsewhere.
Okay, but going forward, how is this position going to be funded? Because now we're talking at least 20,000 per year, which is equivalent to kind of a part-time employee throughout the city. So now we're making a decision here tonight that we're actually taking money out of our budget to fund this.
This was our attempt to get it into the 2020 budgeting process to be able to guarantee this position at 32 hours. The earmark is a worst-case scenario because we're so early in the budgeting process. The potential exists that we may not even have to consider this funded through fund balance. The 19 is taken care of. We're not worried about this. This was the best attempt to get it into the 2020 budget process at 32 hours, just in case we get down this budget road, find out the funding may not 100% be there, that we could at least earmark some fund balance in 2020 to pay for this. It's not guaranteed that we have to use fund balance for this. This was again the attempt to get it in front of you to get into the 2020 budget process.
Right. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything. I just know that there's a lot of other positions that are coming in, and I just didn't want us to say okay tonight, but then we get into budget discussions and all of a sudden people are like, well, we did have an extra 20,000, but you guys decided 2 weeks ago to go this way.
Yeah, and this is a weird one-off situation in a position that's funded through grants that has the potential for this to occur. Again, if it's somebody coming to us to request a new position, our answer, without even really bringing it to council, would be no, we'll deal with that through the budget process. This will not happen often, if ever again, at this point. So this is just to keep staffing levels as is at this point.
We're just trying to maintain.
Oh, I totally get it. I'm just trying to look at future, and we're at that situation where we have to make some tough decisions, and it's just not saying that this decision isn't worth it. I'm just trying to make us all aware of what our decision is tonight and how that may affect our budget in the coming weeks.
Yeah, President Majewski was next.
I'm going to support this because it's really an important position, on top of the fact that this situation has been brewing for a while with this, and it wasn't just brought up to be thrown in at the last second. The one thing I will say about this whole story that we're looking at right now is the pitfalls of accepting outside monies for city positions. We have this in a couple other spots in the city, and at times it makes the city hostage to an outside source. So in future, when these types of situations are presented to us, I hope that they are presented to council before they go any farther, and that when they are, that we think really hard and long about accepting that type of money because of the fact that this situation will happen. This was no fault of the, of anybody on city staff, and this is just a way to ensure that we keep the quality that we expect for the senior center, and that we are determined, and we're determined to keep this going. So I want everybody to vote for this.
The only way to maintain the services that they are today, just to reiterate, is that staffing. So without that, Cindy backs down to just
19 hours.
base level and 19 hours of staffing.
And I wanted to be clear, I don't know if I think it's listed as that, so it's also our volunteer coordinator. And we have almost 150 volunteers at the senior center, so between the programming, the full-time programming piece and the volunteer coordination.
And Alderperson Boersma, then Hiley, and then Reeves.
I'm going to support this for sure. I don't know if people have gone to the senior center. We've got an excellent senior center with people who work extremely hard. We have incredible programs at the senior center, coordinated through, it should be coordinated through the volunteer. This volunteer position, I think right now, people are struggling to keep up the level of excellence at the senior center without having this position. So I definitely think that this is necessary. I think if anybody really, if you've been to the senior center lately, you should be sure that this is an important position. And if you haven't been, I suggest you go over there and have a cup of coffee. It's a great senior center and with great programming, especially over noontime for residents, senior residents of our community.
Alderperson Hiley.
I'm going to support this as well. I think it's obviously crucial to provide these services to seniors in need in our community. Wondering about the kind of the timeline of when we were informed this grant was shrinking, whether we can maybe avoid the unfortunate loss of the staff member because of that.
Right. So the Bryan Foundation does not run on our calendar year. So about halfway through this year, we realized that it would not be funded for 2020.
Alderperson Reeves.
Yeah, and I am also going to support this. And if you didn't get a chance, or if you overlooked it in the packet, one of the questions I had asked initially, and it's included here, is that the total volunteer hours are over 11,000, so that's pretty significant in terms of what they contributed. So just wanted to make sure you saw that.
Okay. And for my part, I've already said, to staff that existing positions are the number one priority. This is an existing position. We'll find a way to fund it in the budget. I'm pretty confident of that. As far as the foundation, we're fortunate that we were able to utilize that in order to build up our programming to what it is today. So we thank them for that. And it's just come to a time where, we have to support it through our own funds. It was really enough to get us to this place. And, without it, I'm not really sure if we'd be having the programs that we do today. So we do appreciate that. And I believe we previously approved some money to fund it to the end of the year, in hopes of being able to preserve it to the end of the year. So regardless, we want to do that. And this really just puts us in a position, in a worst-case scenario, like Jamin mentioned, to get us through next year. But I'm pretty confident we'll be able to budget for it without tapping into that, or at least not that whole amount. So that's what we're going to, look to do. And, I guess hope that we'd all support this one.
Mayor Swadley, as a reminder, the Bryant Foundation is continuing with 25,000, so it is greater than what the portion is that we're asking the city for in contingency.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Resolution 128 of 2019. This one came through Planning Commission. Alderperson Carabello.
Yep. This is Resolution 128 of 2019. Resolution by the Common Council of the City of Stoughton conditionally approving the final plat for Hamilton Street condominiums. Plan Commission recommends approval 7-0. This is basically turning into condos, which was the original intent of this development, and the new owner, which that development has a new owner, would just like to follow through with the turning it into condos as originally intended.
All right, was that a motion?
That is a motion, and I so move. Second.
Second by President Majewski. Any more discussion or anything from planning?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm glad they're following through with the original intent.
Okay. Seeing no questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Resolution 129 of 2019 is also from Planning. Alderperson Carabello.
Resolution R-129 of 2019 is approving a conditional use permit for Margaret Gassner to allow Weeble World Daycare to expand the group daycare use at 1815 Cedarbrook Lane, Stoughton, Wisconsin. Plan Commission recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Riley. Alderperson Carabello.
And this one is a conditional use permit necessary. One of the reasons being to approve this with a to reduce the amount of required parking stalls by about 25% due to the lack of area, but it also expands a successful and expanding business. So I support this.
Anybody have any questions or comments on this one?
If I might,
Go ahead,
Weeble
Alderperson.
World is such a great name, I have to say.
Is that why? Is that,
It's just lovely.
okay. Any other questions or comments or opinions? Alderperson
I
Borsman.
would like Councilman Riley to tell us what a weeble is.
Weeble? Well, I believe it is Weebles Wobble, but they don't fall down. I believe it's a toy, and so I think it's a reference to that, actually.
Thank you.
Councilperson.
That's our lesson for this evening.
There you go.
Alderperson Hirsch.
I just have a question with respect to, they said that there's going to be parking now on this easement. Is that a utility easement? And are we now, I mean, we just went through that whole thing about building on easements, and now there's going to be a parking lot on that. Is that what I'm reading, or?
Part of the access easement.
Pardon?
It's an access easement.
So it's not a utility easement?
No, and it's not uncommon to have paved areas across easements such as this.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't breaking any new ordinance that we just passed a couple weeks ago.
We would never let that happen. Oh, thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Alderperson Hiley.
I think given that we're learning more and more the impact of pavement on flooding issues and just the impact of car culture in general in our climate crisis, I think we should be looking more generally at our parking requirements in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. So that would be something we'd do that Plan Commission, or?
Plan Commission, this actually is, I think, a positive situation where you're actually acknowledging a reduction from the required amount,
Right.
which our ordinance does allow. So it's certainly an acknowledgement of that initiative.
I I think in this case, there's two adjacent businesses that have agreed to share their access area for and have shared parking, or at least the other business is allowing the clients to park on their area, so that's another good success story for that.
Yeah, and I think what you're seeing also in the strip malls is more condo associations where they share parking as well, which really makes the parking and the pavement, at least it's more productive. And you don't just have pavement just because it's required, it's because it'll get used by multiple types of businesses. So, I think it's a positive thing, within reason. I think this is certainly within reason. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. And R-131 in 2019 comes from Finance Committee, Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, I move to approve Resolution 131, 2019. The resolution authorizes the City of Stoughton Director of Finance Comptroller to utilize contingency funds not to exceed $3,000 to complete the purchase of a new handicapped accessible van for the shared ride taxi program. So moved.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Jensen. Alderperson Schumacher.
So this was a budgeted for purchase, and because the quote was gotten a little bit earlier in the year, and the amount of that purchase was increased by just a little bit. I think it was $949 was the shortfall, but just so that we've got that covered in order to finalize the purchase of this vehicle.
Okay. President Lasky.
I want to see a language change on this resolution. Strike handicap and put in disabled. By this point in time in our evolution, we should not be seeing that term at all, ever, especially at the City Council where we've changed every single other ordinance we had. New ones should not be popping up with this in it.
I think we can do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alderperson Borisman.
Just had a question so everybody knows how much the total cost of that van is. And the second question is, because this is an additional fund, and then the second question is, who has control of the van and who owns it?
I'll look at our finance director.
The city technically owns it. It doesn't end up in our capital asset books, but the Stoughton Transit operates it.
So why doesn't it end up on our ledger, side of the ledger?
Well, because it's a federal purchase through a grant, and it's within our records. It doesn't actually show on our balance sheet, but Stoughton Transit operates it. They're required to maintain it. Madison Metro actually runs this program, so they come out annually and inspect the vehicles in terms of minimum maintenance requirements and things like that. So they are inspected on an annual basis.
And the first question is how much it costs?
$37,949. We budgeted $37,000, I believe. So it's a cost overrun of $949. We requested $3,000 in contingency to complete the decaling and all the just minimum pieces that we need to finalize the vehicle.
And just to follow up, if I could, and that is, so if the current taxi service would go out of business, or we would change it to some other taxi service program, that van would definitely stay in our carpool, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know there's a great need for another vehicle with a lift on it, so that's why we applied for the grant. We're fortunate to receive it. They've been using some vans, and then once in a while there's actually an old Crown Vic that they have to use, which really is limited, and plus it's not in the greatest of condition. We're fortunate that was available from the PD, but this really gives us an opportunity to really upgrade our fleet and provide even more rides than they currently are. So this would be a really good thing. Alderperson Borisman.
I just have one follow-up, and that is, now I know when when you apply for a grant, very often there will be a request from the grant provider, requesting the recipient of the grant to, on an annual basis, provide sort of a statement as to how that grant money has been used. Is that part of the taxi service plan that they would report back as well?
Well, we're buying the vehicle, so we're spending the money, they're not. So we would have the financial records in terms of where the money was spent.
Okay, and if there would be a request, then it would go to you, Jamin, probably to say, here's how our grant money is being used.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. And R 132 also comes from Finance, Alderperson Schumacher.
Move to approve Resolution 132, 2019. Resolution authorizes a small claims lawsuit against Bud Mar LLP and B&B Investment Company LLP regarding unpaid annexation agreement town tax reimbursements. And so moved.
Second.
A motion and a second by Alderperson Jensen. Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, this was, the two identified in here were required to pay some of the property taxes in 2019, and they have failed to do so. And I think this is the last way that we can recoup these amounts owed.
And did you have anything to add, Attorney Dragney? Looks like your name's all over this one.
Yeah. So, under the annexation laws that we have in Wisconsin, if a city annexes territory from a town, the city is required to reimburse the town for its lost tax revenue for, I believe, 5 years after the date of annexation. In this case, we entered into an agreement with the parties identified here that required them to reimburse the city for those payments or to make those payments. So it's not that they failed to pay their taxes to the city, they failed to pay under a contractual obligation to the city. And I don't think it's a lot of money that we're talking about. We're talking about a small claims action. And so, but in order to authorize filing even a small claims action, the city council has to authorize it.
Alderperson Hirsch?
I guess, I mean, I'm all for this, but will our lawyer's fee be covered if we win this? Because otherwise, are we spending just as much on lawyers for this case as opposed to what we're actually going to get out?
So that's a great question. I haven't dug too far into this, but here's what I believe the answer is. If the city is successful, it could recover attorney's fees, but they are very limited to like $100. But I believe that in a small claims action, the city could use one of its employees to file the complaint and handle the proceedings. In small claims court, you're not legally required to actually have a lawyer representing you. So if you have a staff person do it and you don't have any attorney time involved, then you can save some money. I don't know, we haven't had any conversation. I haven't had any conversation with staff yet about how they plan to do this. But, I mean, there are forms available that are fairly straightforward through the small claims court. A staff person might be able to do it on their own without requiring attorney time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alderperson Jensen?
Question for the attorney. One of these I see is Stark Automotive.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Stark Automotive. They're no longer the owners of that. It's now owned by, what, Coon County or? So, I mean, is that going to create an issue? You haven't changed ownership?
Well, we're going to base our claim, the city will base its claim on the contract. Whoever the contract required to pay this money. So I'm not aware that.
I was just looking at what this says here for this Budmar LLP. It says Stark is the owner.
Again, we have a contract with somebody.
Okay.
They agreed to pay some money, they didn't pay the money. So whoever they are, that's who we're going to sue, if this is authorized.
Okay. Alderperson Bartlett?
See, the contract was signed in 2014, so did they pay the other years, and is this the last year we're gonna have to deal with this?
Yeah, they actually sold the property in 2018. The agreement itself doesn't dictate what happens when the property is sold, so this would be the next course of action to basically find out what the next step is at this point. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to take this course of action immediately. We'll continue to attempt to collect. We'll say we have authorization to go to small claims. It's not something we want to jump into. I mean, our experience, Ryan admitted this, is watching Judge Judy at this point. So it's not something we're super excited about doing, but we wanted to at least have the option available.
Is 2019 the last payment they have?
They would owe 2020 as well.
Alderperson Riley?
I mean, it seems almost always when a corporation acquires the assets of another corporation, they also acquire the obligations, right? Is there any concern that this is different? I don't know, Matt, if you have an opinion on that, but why wouldn't whoever has acquired the assets of this corporation also acquire all of its obligations? I would assume they must have. So I would assume that they absolutely do owe this, and that's not the question. The question is the will and the cost, et cetera. Am I correct?
I don't understand your question. Are you saying that?
Well, I'm saying this, very simply. When you purchase a corporation, you purchase the corporation's assets, you don't get to say, but I'm not going to take care of any obligations you have as a corporation. I am purchasing this entity. This entity has assets. This entity has obligations. I'm not going to say, I just get the good stuff. I'm not purchasing the bad stuff. That's what I'm saying. Isn't that right, generally? I should think.
So that may be right, but those aren't the facts that we have here, as far as I know. We have a corporate entity that bought real estate,
Right?
and then sold that real estate to another party.
Right.
That other party didn't buy the corporation, to the best of my knowledge.
But okay.
They just bought the real estate.
What I understood is that they basically purchased whatever the corporation had, they purchased, including the whole thing.
Well,
That was what I read,
Yeah.
from what I read, and I know it's limited.
And I'll tell you that I don't know all the facts here either.
Okay.
But my understanding is there's an LLP or there was an LLC that entered into this contract with the city that owned the real estate. That LLC, I'm assuming, is still out there. We may find that LLC has no assets and is judgment proof. I don't know.
That may be, but still, wouldn't it be a lien upon the real estate they purchased, if nothing else then, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, it's
We have
isn't
a
it
contract.
tax obligation?
Well, we have a contract with the LLC.
Right?
The LLC sold one of its assets to a third party. I'm not aware that third party is now responsible for all obligations that an LLC took on. They didn't buy the LLC.
Yeah.
No, I know.
And I would think that once it's communicated, we're going to take the next step. If they have a document that says that, they'll produce it.
All right, thanks.
And then it may come back to us, and we may, rethink who we're talking to.
Okay. Groovy, thank you.
Okay.
Maybe, has this been voted on yet?
Nope.
So you might want to consider amending the motion to say to authorize a small claims lawsuit against Budmar LLP and B&B Investment Company LLP or such other party or parties as may be appropriate regarding unpaid annexation agreement, town tax reimbursements.
Or such other.
Or
Somebody
such
wanna
other
make that
party
as
or
an-
parties as
as
may
an
be
amendment?
appropriate.
I move to amend as the attorneys recommended.
And then if we find out there's another party who should be named, then we'll name them.
Okay.
I would second that.
Yeah. So there's an amendment and a second. Can you repeat that, Matt, for
Yeah.
Holly?
So it's to amend the motion to authorize a small claims lawsuit against Budmar LLP and B&B Investment Company LLP or such other party or parties as may be appropriate regarding unpaid.
It was Ben and Greg.
Okay.
It was a motion and a second. So we have an amendment on the table. You have a question about the amendment,
I
Alderperson
do,
Borsman?
and that is, well, and it may be related to the original motion too, but as a Realtor, what happens in these kind of situations is that there is a study by the title company as to what kind of liens there may be against that property, and the title company may have some liability as well. If they've done a search and they missed it, the fact that there were some taxes due, and they allowed the sale to go through in the first place. So ultimately, I agree with Matt. I mean, there may be other parties that are involved in this.
This would be a catch-all? It would catch up.
If this would cover that, if that's what we
Yeah,
have.
that's a good point. So that'll be something else staff may pursue if the second step
Yeah,
doesn't
the other,
work.
such other entities, I think is a good idea. That's what
Okay.
I'm saying.
So you support the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, so we're voting on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. So we're voting on the original motion with the amendment to include the language that Attorney Dragney provided. Any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. Good conversation between two attorneys. I didn't fall asleep. Item 11 is, I believe this one might have, did this go through finance? Discussion and possible action regarding a one-year contract extension with accurate appraisal for assessor services. Trying to remember if it went through
I think, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, it went through finance, okay. Alderperson Schumacher, remember this one?
I do remember this one. Do we have or do we have to have a resolution for it?
There's another resolution.
I don't know if we necessarily need one, you can just make a motion.
Okay. I make a motion for action regarding a one-year contract extension with accurate appraisal for assessor services.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and you might see that the proposal is in the packet. Does anybody have any questions about the proposal? Alderperson
To
Boersma.
support this, I'm on board of review. I've been impressed every year that Accurate Appraisal has been doing it. I think they're a fine company, and I think we should stick with them.
Okay, and maybe, Jamie, you can kind of outline what kind of the plans are here and the strategy?
So we're nearing the tail end of I think it's a 5-year contract with Accurate. They're still contracted through 2020. We just basically ran out of time to go through a full-blown RFP process for appraisal services. So the easiest option was to just offer up a 1-year extension, and Accurate's okay with that. And then we'll start the RFP process probably May of next year and let the chips fall where they may.
Any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Number 12 is Resolution 133 of 2019. This one comes from Utilities. Alderperson Hirsch, would you like to do this one?
Sure. R 133 of 2019, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the licensing agreement for communications attachments to utility poles between the City of Stoughton Utilities and TDS Metrocom LLC, and I so move.
And is there a second? Second by Alderperson Hiley. Scared me for a minute.
I know, I was like, what?
Crickets. Did you want to elaborate on this one?
No, I think I'll have Jill.
All right, you've been waiting so
Voice.
quiet and patiently
I know.
over there.
Thank you. Just this agreement actually mirrors an agreement that we actually had approved back in May with another communications provider. Basically, it was written by attorney Anita Galucci, and we have a requirement basically to allow attachments to our poles. This agreement just lays out exactly how that's done. I think the big difference, I would say, of that previous agreement that we had, I think that was ultimately they were interested in 33 poles. We have yet to see a permit from that communications provider. Right now, we've been talking with TDS quite frequently, and they are definitely looking to attach to many more of our poles than the last actual draft we saw was about maybe 1,300. This agreement does work through if there's any make-ready work, so if poles need to be replaced because of the attachments. This agreement basically lays out how that actually works, and that would be at no cost to the utility.
Alderperson Hirsch.
And just because I wasn't at the last utilities meeting, but this is not the 5G, this is just the regular.
Correct. This is not 5G. This will ultimately be fiber attachments, kind of like you already see out there that other communication companies have. It is not 5G.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Alderperson Riley?
Thank you. I just want to note, and there are probably others too, I did read all 24 pages of this and the appendices, so if there's a gold star awarded for that, I'd like to have one, and anybody else as well. Thank you.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Item number 13 is a discussion regarding financial health of TID 6 and potential future transactions in the Business Park North expansion. And I guess we'd like to talk about this in closed session. So I would be looking for a motion. Alderperson Hirsch?
I'll make the motion to convene in closed session pursuant to the Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, for the purposes of deliberating or negotiating for the purchasing of public properties and investing in public funds or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And I so moved.
Second by Alderperson Jensen. Any questions about going into closed session? Attorney Dragney?
Before you do, let me just ask Jim, is there going to be just a presentation about how the TID 6 is part of that? That's not a closed session, so.
Well, no, I think we might talk a little bit about exclusively roses and NAFA.
So we can do some things closed session. You can't necessarily do everything in closed session.
Yeah.
If you're going to do, it looks like you're going to do a presentation on, that's unrelated to the real estate transaction, or not this, it's not about the negotiation of that agreement.
There would be probably no decisions just based directly on this. I mean, this would be the information to allow them to potentially understand later when things happen.
Well, so the question is your presentation, is there part of this discussion that is not something that must be done in closed session for competitive or bargaining reasons?
I think the reason we listed it for closed session is because we might be talking about things that might put somebody's reputation out there, and talk about financial things that, affect them, and we have to make decisions on, what we want to do in regards to that.
There is information in the presentation that could tip the scales in terms of the advantage in the negotiations on the back end too.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll go into closed session. We need a roll call.
Boersma,
Aye.
Caravello,
Aye.
Doom,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Riley,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Bartlett.
Okay, we'll go into closed session. Does anyone want to take a quick break, or you want to keep going?